Very good evening, Zimbabwe. You are listening to Studio 7 from the Voice of America on Monday, December 22nd, 2014. And this is Live Talk. I'm Blessing Zulu.
And I'm Kip Stube.
And tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about the Unity Accord.
To join the discussion, phone us directly at this number, 001-202-619-2077, and we'll call you back.
Of course, Live Talk goes out to Zimbabwe on our 909 medium wave frequency and on the 4930-5940 and 15455 kilohertz shortwave Monday through Friday at 8:30 p.m.
On the internet, you can find us at www.voazimbabwe.com, www.voashona.com, and www.voindebele.com.
I actually tend to know some of the insights that our own vice president said, and one of the things that he definitely said was that remain where I've left you, remain in this unity accord. Do not move out of it.
Umelane lesi sanceda into eyodwa kuphela ukumisa ukubulawa kwabantu emathebeleleni okwakwenzakale ngesikhathi sekhukhulamungu kwaba lokuthula ukuthi abantu babuye abanye babuye ababesegangeni ekuthiwa ngama-dissident lawa amalutshwana.
Zuva ranhasi reunity accord rakakoshesesa kana vanhu vachiziva kuti chakaita kuti zuva iri rive tochii. Zuva ranhasi ndiro rinodzara peace, tranquility yatinayo muno muZimbabwe.
Once again, thanks for joining us, and you are listening to Studio 7 Live Talk. And tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about the Unity Accord.
Today marks the 27th anniversary of the Unity Accord signed between ZANU-PF and PF-ZAPU. The 1987 agreement was signed between President Robert Mugabe and the then ZAPU leader, PF-ZAPU leader, Joshua Nkomo, to end hostilities between the two revolutionary parties that had led to the death of thousands of people in the Midlands and Matabeleland regions.
The question today is, did the Unity Accord achieve its goals? Those in ZANU-PF say the Unity Accord has served its purpose of uniting the nation, but critics say it has lost significance.
What are your views on this issue? If you wish to join the show right now, phone us directly at this number, 001-202-619-2077, and we'll call you back. That number again is 001-202-619-2077. You can also send us a message on WhatsApp, and our number is 1-202-465-0318. That number again, 1-202-465-0318. Mfowethu
onguka amadzadiwa nasi tida kuti tinge tichitarisa nezvezuva rekubatana kweZAPU PF ZAPU neZANU-PF muna 1987 tichida kutarisa kuti pane zvakakwanisa here kuti zvinge zvichinzi zvinobatika zvakaunzwa nekuda kwekusainiranwa chibvumirano ichochi chinozikanwa kuti Unity Accord chakasainiranwa icho navaRobert Mugabe namushakabvu Joshua Nkomo, mapato avo maviri achibva abatana. Vamwe vari kuti chibvumirano ichi chakashanda kuti nyika ikwanise kunge ichibatana nekufambira mberi, asi vamwe vari kuti hapana chabuda. Gibbs.
Yebo kambe Zulu ndaba lingatshona njani khona ngapho lapha elikhona. Siyakwazi ukuthi selilungisela ikhisimusi kodwa lingahambi ukhisimusi ke siqoqe kancane. Lapha ke sikhuluma nge-Unity Accord kumbe sithi ukubambana kwe-PF-ZAPU le ZANU-PF ngo-1987. Siyakhumbula ke ukuthi lokhu kwalandela ukulwisana kokhona kumbe sithi ukubulawa kwabantu abakhona ngale ke eMatabeleland le Midlands provinces bebulawa ke i-5th Brigade. Abaningi ndiyayazi sibili i-5th Brigade kwakuthiwa ikukuraundi. Kwakuthiwa sibili abantu abaningi babhubha ngaleso sikhathi. Nxa sibona ke Blessing kungakenziwa i-Unity Accord leyi kwenziwa imihlangano ethize. Singathi imihlangano iyafika ichumi eyenziwayo kungakasayinelwana. Kodwa ke kuthiwa sokusayinelwana khona phana kwasokukhulunyiswana ukuthi hayi kumele benze njani. Esikwaziyo nxa ukhangela i-Unity Accord leyi ibhaliwe ukuthi u-First Secretary lo President nguRobert umnumzana uRobert Mugabe. Kuphinde kukhulunywa ukuthi ibandla elabunjwayo kuyamele libizwe kuthiwa iZANU-PF. Njalo kwamele kulwiswane ukuthi kube le one party state.
Yeah.
Abantu ingcaba kwazi khonokho. Makonapo, qhubeka baba.
Of course, for those of you who are just joining us tonight on Studio 7 Live Talk, we are talking about the Unity Accord. We have some WhatsApp messages. Let's hear what people are saying. Trevor say now it's him, Mugabe, who is breaking the accord. And Tutuko says there is no longer any Unity Accord in Zimbabwe. It has totally collapsed. M. Tulani says it works because there is peace in the country. Allen says there was no Unity Accord. That act was to benefit ZANU-PF only. Joseph says no significance really because it never had, but it was a forced relationship. It was a matter of life and death. Manasa says, I doubt it. I think the accord died together with the late Joshua Nkomo. People are not united and they never were. In the eyes of the public, yes, there was the so-called unity, but in reality, people are not united. I think let's end there and just go to our first guest. That is Dr. Bright Matonga, the former Deputy Information Minister. Dr. Matonga, good evening.
Thank you very much. Good evening, listeners.
Thank you. Gibbs, maybe you can start the ball rolling.
Yes, Dr. Matonga, what can you say about the Unity Accord?
I think I missed the first part of your interview, but really the background is that there were divisions between former PF ZAPO and ZANU-PF, which led to a protracted struggle, and I think from the early 80s to about 1987, when the Unity Accord was signed at this particular day that we are now celebrating today. So really, there have been lots of improvement. You know, there was war, people died. Unfortunately, a chapter that was described by our president is an unfortunate part of our history. I think a lot has been achieved in terms of unity. There is no war in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is a very peaceful country. We've achieved a lot since the 80s or since the signing of the Unity Accord in terms of education. According to the United Nations, Zimbabwe is right at the top at number 1. Zimbabweans all over, they are in charge of businesses, and now Zimbabweans are running Studio 7 in the United States. Zimbabweans are doing a lot of things which we should be proud of. Zimbabwe, economically, I think we have to divide it. Economically, I think people are being empowered in terms of land. Land has been given to the majority of people. But of course, look, the issue of production is work in progress. In terms of empowerment, what we call Zim assets, that's like the American dream, where one is supposed to own property, you have your car, you have your business, you feel that you are a Zimbabwean because if you go to court, the law protects everyone. We embarked on a new constitution, which we were signed into law in 2014. So there's been a lot in terms of the progression and empowerment of our people, not only black people, but all Zimbabweans. I think that's where we're working towards. We've got 2 vice presidents, one from former PF ZAPO, and the one before it was a woman, but now which is the constitution of ZAPO was changed now. So we've got 2 vice presidents. So in terms of even appointments of ministers, I think the government tried by all means possible to make sure that people are represented. In terms of languages, now all the 17 official languages are now official. They should be taught in school. It's our constitutional right. From Bemba, Nyanja, you name it, wherever you are, those are now official languages. In terms of media, they've been opening up of the media webs, and you've got local radio stations, you've got newspapers, you've got a lot. So really,
I don't know.
Country.
Oh, okay. Thank you. We thought we had lost you, but do stay on the line, Dr. Matonga. I think we have our second guest now. That is Mr. Strike Mkandla, ZAPU Alternate Secretary General. Mr. Mkandla, good evening.
evening, sir. What did you call the other man? Dr. who?
Dr. Bright Matonga is the former deputy.
Good. I know him, right. Dr. Bright Matonga. You are also here talking to Dr. Strike Mkanda.
Oh, okay.
From my own qualifications.
Okay. Dr. Mkanda and Dr. Matonga.
Right. So what was your question for me?
The question was, you heard what Dr. Matonga said about the unit accord. He's saying that if we look at where Zimbabwe is at the moment, the unit accord was very much significant in terms of economic development. He talked about education and a number of issues. What is your take?
Well, first of all, actually, I don't know why he's starting after the Unity Accord, because some of the best things that happened to Zimbabwe actually at the beginning, from 1980 when we took over, with very good ministers who knew what they were doing, people like Dr. Niwatiwa, Dr. Seichung, and of course Timothy Stamps. There was Usho Kunze. They were very, very competent ministers right at the beginning. And then these ones from ZAPU as well, including Dr. Nkomo himself, who was also in that first government. So before the Kukuraundi, the government that came in at the beginning was very promising. And the economy, of course, was the pride of many people in the region. They used to tell us, you guys, make sure you don't make our mistakes, because north of the Zambezi there was a lot of corruption. I worked in Zambia, for example, from 1985 at the United Nations. And they already had problems because of corruption, that's one thing, but also because of the sanctions that were imposed on them while they were helping us after UDI, the Unilateral Declaration of Independence by Ian Smith. So the North was having problems, and we were doing very well. By the way, we took independence with the most educated population. So even before we start claiming credit, Zimbabweans had the biggest number of students in the UK from 1974 to actually independence. We even sent people from the UK to study medicine and other subjects in Eastern Europe. So I think that is an exaggeration sometimes. We get credit even for things that we didn't do. We also did very well, it must be said. But then what happened afterwards? You see, the repression from 1982, the underdevelopment of material, destruction of infrastructure, denial of opportunity for even the Midlands. A large part of the country was actually left behind as the progress was happening. There are schools in some areas near where I am just now. Some of the schools have not had a classroom block built in the last 50 years. So this progress is very uneven to start with. And secondly, the whole country has now gone down. And I'm not sure that Dr. Matonga would be very proud of the unpaid civil servants and all that, because this is our doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those of you who are just joining us. Good evening. And tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about the Unity Accord that was signed between PF ZAPU and ZANU-PF in 1987 on December the 22nd. And our guests this evening, we have Dr. Bright Matonga and Dr. Strike Mkandla. And your host, yours truly, Blessing Zulu.
And Gibbs Tube. So I'll read a section or a clause of the Unity Accord, which is very interesting. It says the agreement, according to this agreement, ZANU-PF shall have two second secretaries and vice presidents who shall be appointed by the first secretary and president of the party, and that ZANU-PF shall seek to establish a socialist society in Zimbabwe on the guidance of the Marxist-Leninist principles. Mr. Matonga, I think that was a mouthful, right? What has happened to this Marxism? What happened?
We're talking of an issue that took place in 1987. Obviously, we're coming from the war. The Chinese, the Russian influence, former PF ZAPU, the support from the former Soviet Union, and the ZANU-PF or ZANU then was backed by the Chinese. But I think one thing that people tend to miss is that people think ZAPU belongs to the belly and the ZANU were Shonas. That's a very wrong conception. Everyone was ZAPU. And they moved and they broke away to form ZANU. So ZAPU has got Shonas. Same as applies to ZANU PF then. So really, let's not tribalize this. And once you tribalize it, you trivialize it. We achieved quite a lot. Yes, that was a very unfortunate part of our history. And it's good for people and easy for people to say, Kukura Wundi and Kukura Wundi. You move people's emotions. And everyone, and I want people in Matabeleland to listen very carefully. Every Jack and Jill who wants to form a party, they go to Matabeleland and they start talking about Kukura Wundi. They get their seats and they do nothing at all. So people should be very careful when people come to form political parties. And they try to whip people into line. And once they've got their votes, they disappear. It's important for people in Matabeleland to think that they are, to make sure that they are Zimbabweans at heart. People should feel they are second-class citizens, and people should not run to South Africa and and run away from Zimbabwe. This is their country. Whether you are independent, whether you are black, whether you are white, let's be very careful on that.
Dr. Mkanza is itching to say something.
Did you hear me laugh? Because the first thing that I want to pick from Dr. Matonga's last contribution is to insinuate that ZAPU is synonymous with Matabeleland. It is not. Secondly, the parties have always been formed in Matabeleland, the serious ones, from the ANC to the NDP to ZAPU itself. The only exception is ZANU, which broke away from ZAPU in 1963, and it a predominantly Shona leadership. So that is why people start thinking in tribal terms. But even after ZANU left ZAPU was still led by the majority of its leadership emanating from Mashonaland. If you are interested, I can give you the names. You'll be surprised that there are so many people who came from Mashonaland who were leading ZAPU even after the departure of ZANU. So the killing of people in Matabeleland is a different ball game because they were perceived as being towards in supporting ZAPU. In other words, they regarded as a ZAPU base, and therefore Kukura Wundi was unleashed on them. It is quite, I think it is really disingenuous to accuse those who have been killed of being tribal. If you are killed for your tribe, that's the first thing you notice, that you are the only one who's been killed at that point in time. It's not you who chooses to be tribal. Secondly, if you are jobless and your area is closing 90% of its factories, it would be ridiculous to stay here instead of going around looking for jobs in Botswana and South Africa. Anyway, even in Harare, if they can give you a job. But, to imply that people in Matabeleland are keen to leave the country and maybe unpatriotic in the process is really an insult to injury. I think that is the least that can be said.
Yes, siyakuzwa kakhulu baba Mkandla. Sike sithathe ke umnumzana uNdlovu lapha Blessing osecingweni. Baba Ndlovu ungawutshona njani?
Sitshonile baba, litshona njani?
Hayi siyaphila Ndlovu. Nathi uTabo ngathini baba?
Hayi siyabonga. Gibbs, into engiyibonayo mina la ukuthi abadala bayenza iphutha ngesikhathi mabesenza lesi sivumelwano. Bavumelana babhala phansi, awuzange uxolelwane. Bashiya abantu beloke benjalo bengaxolelana nananga. Abantu abathi beseza kwaxolelana kwasala kungenamuntu onecala. Lesi vumelwano sesokwazi uhamba ngoba lesi vumelwano lesi yiso esibulala iZimbabwe manje. Ayikho into ebulala iZimbabwe. So uyabona manje uthi ubaba umnangakho ungenile ngithi. Uyothi ubaba umnangakho mefa between uShiri noShiwuru noShiwenga ukhona ozethatha laba abanamakhesi eGukra Wundi ibona bazoliphatha leli liza until uzokuyefika ukugcinela ukuthi bayaphela bonke ngenxa yalesi sivumelwano. So into engcono mina lesi sivumelwano vela nje uthi siya celebrate siyathwane akusho lutho vele ebantwini baseZimbabwe kusho kuba ama politician awezani especially le izane sasele neZAPU bambene.
kukhuluma kuwo kithi thina abantu ngaphandle vela kusiza ngalutho kuzosiza kuphela uma bengalungisa le nkinga ukuthi kungabi nomuntu onefiye yokuthi kwabulawa abantu emathebeleleni yikho lapho ikithi kuzolunga khona kungaba nomuntu ozoqhamuka nalo mbono yikho lapho kuzosiza khona izakhamuzi and okwesibili ngiyasupporta lo baba obekhuluma manje kusengikhohlwe ukuthi ubani
ubaba umkhandli umkhandli
no not umkhandli lo omunye lo
umatonga
abantu basemathebeleleni mabayeke ukuthi umuntu befoma iphathe gijima efike ekhulume kube ngeGuground. That is wrong. Bengamthatha ukhuluma manga kubo. Umuntu okhuluma ngeGuground akaze nesolution ukuthi uzoyilungisa kanjani le nkinga ngeGuground ngoba yinkinga. Nalama opposition party ayehluleka ukuyilungisa. Nalabo esesele nabamathebelelendi bayehluleka ukuba nengqondo ekhaliphile efana nekababa uJoshua Nkomo waqhamuka leso ethi madoda kuze sibe nokuthula ngcono siyenzeni i-unit. Manje sesifuna umuntu ozothi okuze leli izwe lihambe njengoba abantu basemathebelelendi yibo abonakala ukuthi bagodlele ecase ngani bayibambile. Ukuthi kukhona bazohamba khona bazoboshwa so singenza kanjani laba ababonakala ukuthi bazoboshwa bekhululeke sifuna umuntu onjalo emathebeleleni nobaba lo i-deputy president manje angibona ukuthi ngaba nale ngqondo ukuthi eqhamuke nalowo mbono ukuthi kuyezwe kanjani ngoba uma kungenzwa ngalokhu i-benefit izoba kuba ama-politician ngemali zethu eze-tax kuphelele lutho but umphakathi sizoqhubeka sibe nabantwana abalala ehlathini nabantwana abanama-degree angasebenzi eZimbabwe okuyinto esingayithandiyo okuze abantwana bephume bengaphandle abahanjiswa ukuthi bayathanda isisu masihambile can do anything obona ukuthi singasutha
Endlovu baba sibonga kakhulu Ndlovu yes siyabonga kakhulu
okay
what Mr. Ndlovu is saying is raising a lot of issues here. He says this agreement that was signed is very problematic in the sense that it protects those people who are alleged to have participated in the Kukurawundi massacres. So he says at the end of the day those people who are alleged to have participated will be protected at all costs by the unity agreement. So he says he also reacted to some kind of indications that some people leave Matabeleland and go to South Africa or Botswana just because of just living for the sake of it. He says no, the problem is there are no jobs there. At the end of the day nothing happens. And then lastly, I think he mentioned something very important. He said, these parties that are being formed, they always come to Matabeleland and talk about Kukurawundi, but they have no solution. So people in that region should actually say, okay, if you mention that kind of thing, give us the solution to it. And I think lastly, he says the agreement doesn't, bring that kind of reconciliation within society. So I think that's one of the most important issues. Yeah, so I'll come back. Mana kancane just kancane nje sike sathe ke umnumzana uNkomo osegoli baba Nkomo unjani baba Nkomo khona ecingweni
ngikhona
kunjani Nkomo
siyaphila njani ma
bokuthi ngabafitshana uthi shasha khona lapho siza uthi ungatheni
iyinithi leyo ingcolile ngoba uNkomo wayisayine ekhala ungabe bulala abantu kithi eMatabeleland labona ababaseleyo yibo sebesele bethiwa nabamelizana bebangu6 abasincedi ngalutho uNkomo wasebenza lapha nesayina ngoba ubaba lo wayibulala abantu lama isikhundla sesengasinika mbhido nkeboleko ukiti osatshiwa uNkomo asisebenzi ngoba iyinithi level asibenefit lutho kiyo siyabonga ngoba izaphi siyaphuma kusele khona kokuyisihlokholongwana bekungu6 asilandaba lapho siyalandela abaphumayo omkaratela labodabengwa ibesibathayila ihlombi inyisile ingcolile asoze saphathize recognize ngoba abacelebrate futhi babulala abantu bakithi nge50 brigade omunye wama survivors ngakubonisa abangaba khona abantu bakithi kabuhlungu abakhohlwe ngakho behlale lapho kuyinto kwabo lokho berobhe laba barobhayo lalaba batsamela izapho bangu6 asilandaba laba sibafuni abahlale khona lapho bencede banikeza kokungukudla bese bamele thina izapho ngiyabantu bonke eZimbabwe asole site A1 esipelayo ukuthi ababengakhulumi ngayo okuyinhloko abakukhansile ngovele into engasincedi ngalutho namhlanje siyahlupheka siphandle ngenxa yakho abantu bakithi abasebenzi siyancindezelwa ulimi lwakithi lukhulunywa ngendlela ezingcolileyo hamba lubhala emabhodini la kuma passport yodwa into ebhala lapha ngolimi lwakithi waye kungabhala abantu bakithi.
Yes, awuzwa kakhulu ke mnumzana Nkomo kodwa umbuzo wami engakubuza wona okugcina nje baba Nkomo ubona zali kungenziwani ukuthi abantu bathothwe inhliziyo ngakhonokho ngoba into leyo nganayiphela
konke ngabantu okwenza ama-leaders akuphume konke kungena abafana abancane okwaswera abafana abancane laba abangala amacala abangala amagazi asizondani ngemhlobo eZimbabwe sizonda ababulali laba abaleke benikana izikhundla awungena abafana abancane laba noma uvele eHarare lakithi lakangene ovela kithi ngapha kumbe ebhinge emathileni ebe ngupresident kanti wale kuthiwa Sosveri Harare awungene umkhalanga kumbe umtonga umndebele kutshintshwane sibona ukuthi ifeyila iphuma kuyiphi side kube ngajabula ngoba le ikhulu yonke phezulu ayiphume yonke iyabulala abantu from the 2008 yabulala abantu asiyifuni asoze sapha vele sayifuna
Enkomo baba
thengiso kumnyama ngazi befakeni kithi khona ngale asibafuni abafaka idengele yabo oswera abafana amanyala ngamacala bonke lamagazi abafake noma vele abavela kuphi samthayela izandla nothi laba babulala baphambi kwethu laba bagcwele igazi la.
Enkomo baba siyabonga kakhulu khona ngapho ke eJohannesburg wophenduka njalo nje ungasikhohlwa baba. Yes, bonke kakhulu. So what Mr. Nkomo is saying, Blessings, that this unit accord is very dirty because when Mr. Nkomo signed it, you know, he was under protest, you know, to sign it because his people were being massacred. And then he went on to say that, you know, there's no benefit at all from this unit accord. And he says all the people, all the leaders that are there today in ZANU-PF, they are representing themselves. And he claims that there are only 50 of them that are from the former ZAPU camp. So then he says, this unit accord is hopeless.
Of course, for those of you who are just joining us, this is Studio 7 Live Talk. And tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about the Unity Accord. Of course, as we always urge Zimbabweans, it's important to talk about issues and not to fight, because there is more that there is more that unites us than divide us, so to speak. And of course, our guests this evening, we have Dr. Mkandla and Dr. Matonga. We also have some messages on WhatsApp, Gibbs.
Yes.
Tina chodokufa anotie zapu kana pasina dabhengo atizive ko inogosarudzirwa munhu navamugabe kuti zvadii. Zapu yakamedzwa. Charles says, I personally don't call it unit accord, but rather Zapu swallowed agreement. It lost its significance after the death of Joshua Nkomo or the Nkomo brothers. Mr. Mugabe always takes this day as any other day because he goes for holiday without making important deliberations for the day. Samuel says the unit accord is nothing to celebrate, nothing to write home about. And we also have Tinashe M, who says the unit accord is still working, but this can only be viewed by those with political binoculars. The appointment of Pelekezela Mpoko as the second vice president was as a result of this unit accord. The unit accord signifies that the Ndebele and Shona uprising is no longer existent. We are one people, we are one nation, so we have to preach unity. James says the accord is now void. We can't talk of unity when there is no democracy. It doesn't exist. Of course, we'll talk more about those issues. Dr. Mkandla and Dr. Matonga, please do stay on the line. And Mkoma Lloyd Homani Rambai Muri Parunare, for our radio listeners, unfortunately, it ends here, but we are streaming live. Go to www.voazimbabwe.com and press on Live Talk. This is Blessing Zulu.
And I'm Gibbs Dube saying, stay tuned to Zimbabwe.
for those of you who are just joining us, good evening. And tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about the Unity Accord. The Unity Accord, of course, was signed on the 22nd of December by President Robert Mugabe, representing the ruling ZANU-PF party, and also his rival at that particular time, the late Vice President, Dr. Joshua Nkomo. Of course, the accord was to end hostilities in the Matabeleland and Midlands regions, where thousands were allegedly killed during this civil war in Zimbabwe. Gibbs.
What are your views on this issue? If you wish to join the show right now, phone us directly at this number, 001-202-619-2077, and we'll call you back. That number again, 001-202-619-2077. You can also send us a message on WhatsApp. Our number is 1-202-465-0318. That's Kubeka Mfowethu.
Titange kuenda kumteereri. Mkoma Lloyd makadi.
Makadi ngwamblesi.
Aiwa isu tiri nani. Muri kuona sei nyaya yatiri kutaurai yekubatana kweZANU-PF nePF zap.
Kuona vangu ngwamblesi inyaya yakaitika kuma 1987. Pasina the late Joshua Nkomo. So yes mukatarisa kupakasara vamugabe vari pachizvavo. And ndinoona kuti Unity Accord yachona haichashanda. Ola kuti hakusisina munhu even kunzako kwachona akanga ainge ari so powerful than Dr. Joshua Nkomo. So amugabe vanokwanisa kuitawo zvavanenge vachingodawo nekuti mutemo wachona vanenge vachingotora mumba mavo vachingoitawo zvavanenge vafungawo. Saka hakuchisina yakasimudza musoro even kuzapu kwachonawo kuti zapu yachona yakamira sei. Saka yangova zapu yangova Unity Accord yasara pakare nachete pati kuti tichenge ma-implementations awakunga wakawirirana pachezvavoiva hapana zviri kuitika. Saka ndinoona kunge chinhu chisina nebasa rese yakatongomedzwa kudhara neZANU-PF.
Asi hapana kana chimwe chete chamaonawo chabuda ipapa.
Hapana chabuda Mukoma Blessing nekuti zvinhu zvakawanda zvatiri kuona izvi kungoti pari pana zvinhu zvokuti pana zvinhu zvokungovhara vanhu kungoteka tingoappointe mamwe madeputy president anenge ari kumaZAP members but iye ZAP yacho pachezvayo haichimo. Saka ndosandinoridza kuta kuti ZAP yacho pachezvayo yakafa. Asi yatonge paina a leader weZAP so far anga ari so powerful than the lady Joshua Nkomo. Maybe ungadai tikutaura zvimwe zvinhu but nokuda kuti ZAP yacho Dumiso Dawengwa is the leader of ZAP again. So achazoti ZAP yacho yekuna Dawengwa neyekuna Joshua Nkomo vaJoshua Nkomo vari kupi. Saka achaziva kuti which function kuna pamatonanzira zulu. Hapana chinhu chinogona chikushanduka panyaya yeUnity Accord iyoyo.
Aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru Mukoma Lloyd nekupinda muchirongwa chedu.
Ndatenda Mukoma Blessing.
Of course, what Lloyd is saying is ZAPU needs a leader who is as inspirational as the late Dr. Nkomo was. He's saying minus a strong leader in ZAPU, he does not see this accord working. Of course, I asked him, in Shona, there's a saying that gudo kuipa haro asa arijike usiku. The baboon might be ugly, but it does not feed during the night. So anything that happens during the night, you cannot accuse the baboon of taking part in such things. But he's saying he does not see any achievement at all, in this Unity Accord. Regaiti dzokere kuna vabatonga navamukandla.
Yeah. So we'll start with you, Dr. Matonga. So you are hearing these kind of sentiments by people. They're saying this Unity Accord is not working at all. There's nothing called unity. So, but I'll add something on top of that. Is there any peace without reconciliation in any way?
ndombozokera muchishona ndida kupindura mukoma wapedza kutaura vari kutaura zvezapu isara zve-pf zapu ZANU-PF asara zvezapu yaadabengwa pf zapu. And the issues that we are discussing are constitutional issues. These are things that are within our law. Unity Accord is a constitutional thing. It is in the Constitution. So it has to be respected. Whether a leader is there or is no longer there, but it's about those people who came from those particular organs. It's not about Ndebele, it's about Shona. It's unfortunate because we can go on and try and provoke emotions. So very petty. We don't want to go to all those things. What happened, that issue was dealt with by our leaders. It was a very unfortunate part of our history, which we cannot ignore, by the way. Issues have got to be addressed. People from Matabeleland, people from either Midlands, people from all over the country, they should bring up issues. We want to hear those issues. What is happening in Matabeleland? Is there water? If there's no water, people have got a right to complain to their government because it's a constitutional right. Industries are closing in Bulawayo. People have got no jobs. We want people to come up with solutions. If you go out and run away, people that are available are around, they will vote or not vote. If you don't vote, you are as good as someone who has voted. And whoever wins will call the shots. So for people to say we are running away, we are doing this, if you don't take part in national issues, national politics, then unfortunately you've got to do with what is available. It is unfortunate. We need to see industries opening in Bulawayo. We need to see more schools, modern schools. We know we've got universities, the University of Solution University, a National University of Science and Technology. We've got a university again, Lupane State University. We've got Gwanda Polytechnical Colleges. We need to see more schools. We need to see more people staying at home. This is what we want to hear, so that we support the Unity Accord. People that are saying they are not mentioning anything. You can't say nothing has been achieved. Excuse me. A lot has been achieved, but more needs to be done. But what is it that needs to be done? That's what I want to hear from Dr. Mkanla. He's the one in Bulawayo. Tell us what you want to done for people in Matabeleland. We can just stay emotional. And I'm happy the other gentleman, I think, Mr. Lowu. He said political parties come to Matabeleland people to form political parties and they do nothing, which is exactly what I've said. People should be very smart. You can't have people come to make money on Matabeleland and they do nothing. The MDC was voted into power, they did nothing, and now they are a thing of the past. We now need to see solutions for our country, for everybody. We now need to see Zambe's water project so that Bulawayo has water. Bulawayo has electricity continuously. That's what we want to hear. We want to see our people coming back to Bulawayo, to Harare. We also want to see our people not identifying themselves as from that particular region, but as Zimbabweans first. This is what I'm looking forward to. This is what I wanted to hear from Dr. Mkanda, to say, look, yes, this has been achieved, but we think more can be done.
Dr. Mkanja?
This is sounding good. I wish that we got this challenge more often instead of being told by Harare what to do. Now, when it comes to the answer, first of all, we know what we want. It must not sound like those who are opposing ZANU-PF have no agenda. First, the most important thing we said in the election, which is primary in our manifesto example, is that there must be devolution of power. And that, some of that was accepted into the new constitution. Unfortunately, it is very, very far from being enough. For example, Chapter 14 of the Constitution actually says there shall be devolution of power. It spells it very nicely. When you get to Chapter 17, the allocation of resources, it says no less than 5% of national budget shall be devoted to the whole family. In other words, if the guys in charge in Harare take 90% of the resources to do whatever they like, and they give 10% to devolve government, then evolved governments around the country, they will consider that they've done a lot. So we have kept even in the commitments made. So that's step number one. Because if you're in charge of Bulawayo, you don't even have the resources to do anything with it. So we need evolution, and then of course proportional representation in terms of sharing of national power. But when it comes to this issue of people coming to Matabele and that must be smart, the fact that Dr. Simeza finds that he can even have the guts to say people must be smart, he thinks smartness is reserved for Harare. Nobody should be telling people in Matabele to be smart. They are smart enough. They know it. That's why they resisted. Even after the killings, they did not change. They continued to support the opposition parties. So people are smart in Matabele. Number two, it comes to smartness. People know that Bulawayo needs water. It has done so since 1912. Even the whites started in 1912 to talk about the Zambezi pipeline for Bulawayo. And the Matabele and Zambezi Water Trust is still in existence, starved of funds to bring the water to Bulawayo, in spite of abundance of resources in the pipeline corridor, which could be used actually to develop, first of all, the corridor itself, and second, to make sure water gets to Bulawayo, and if necessary, to go to other areas in the south of the country which are drought-prone. So there are specific things that can be done. I wanted also to touch very quickly on the issue of civil war. And I think that if I had, there are people who say, yes, there was a civil war. In the 1982 massacre of civilians, over 20,000 of them, this was not a civil war. It was a one-sided slaughter by armed people killing unarmed civilians. Now, it's easy for Dr. Chinet and others to say this is unfortunate. It's part of our history. The Nazis who killed Jews during the Second World War are still being hunted down and being charged. The people in the Rwanda genocide, they are still being charged. In Kenya, even recently, even presidents were going to The Hague to answer charges of killing civilians and so on. But ours is unfortunate history. People want to write off what has happened. There are areas in which they do not know what happened to their people. The children can't get birth certificates because their parents cannot be accounted for. So these are life problems. The legacy of Kukuraund is a live legacy. It is not history that we can brush under the carpet. Then this unity Accord business. Unity Accord, by the way, give it due in one thing. If you look at Article 9 of the Unity Accord, I'm sure you have it in front of you. It says both parties, that is up and down, shall in the interim meaning before things happen, shall take immediate, vigorous steps to eliminate and end the insecurity and violence prevalent in Matabele. They didn't mention any other part of the country. Prevalent in Matabele. This is not an invention by people in Matabele. And the reason why people fled are still here in this Unity Accord. In the interim, has not happened. When the government of national unity put together a peace and reconciliation mechanism, even the people who were trying to help, like New Zealand of MTC, were themselves being arrested while they were supposed to be helping with reconciliation. So this is a joke. I think that people in Harare who are in charge of the center should avoid being patronizing about outlying areas which have serious problems, which need national attention, all right, but which are felt very specifically in some of the areas of the country. So, Dr. Chimza, I think it would be good if you make a challenge and listen what answers you get from the people that experience Kukuraund, and then also that experience 90% closure of factories. These are things, we are on the hub of the Zimbabwean industry. Now, when you come there, you're surprised at the Chinese goods being sold everywhere. It's turning into a flea market, and that is not something that you can watch and say nothing about.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mkandla. I think we had lost Dr. Matonga. We are trying to connect with him. Tete Racho? Tiripo hedu makadiwo muri kuona sei nyaya yezuva rekubatana kweZANU PF nePF ZAP?
ndiri kuona sevaira ichi chingori chireba chakangonyorwa kuti vanhu vangonzi vabatana kuti vangomisa kuwana kwavanga kuripo kuti kurova kwavaita ende kuuraya kwavaita vanhu enguva vepa rakangosaimwa asi pasina chaizvo chaizvo zviri kuratidza kuti vanhu vavabatana ndinoona kuti hapana chimbo kuti vanhu vabatana kuti chingori chakanyorwa
tetera foni yenyu iri kumboita ichikata-kata, munogona kufamba mbichana here? Saka muri kuti hapana chamaona chabuda apa? Aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru tete racho nekupinda muchirongwa chedu. Tingadai tataura nguva yakati rebei asi foni yenyu inenge iri kumbotinetsei, asi tinotenda. I think we now have Mr. Dr. Matonga Beck Gibbs.
Yes. Dr. Matonga, can you hear us?
Okay, I will.
Dr. Matonga? Are you on the line, Dr. Matonga? I think we still have a problem there. Blessing. We'll try to call him again. Mbwegwe baba Mkandla, siyabona ke ukuthi nxa ukhangele uclose 6 kwampana ku-agreement ibhalwe ukuthi eleZimbabwe iZANU-PF bekumele izame ngamandla wonke ukuthi kube lalokho kuthiwa i-one party state elizweni. Kambe sokwacina ngaphi? Kuya ngaphi khonokho?
Well, iyazama sibili ukuthi ibe yi-one party njengoba iseyabulala izapho isenzela ukuthi kube yi-one party state okuthiwa yiZANU. Mina yazi ukuthi bangamangalisa abantu abanye ukuthi umuntu athi inhlanganiso ezimbili zizahlangana zithi zihlangene bese kuthiwa seziyile eyakhona zozimbili. In other words, akula unity enjalo. I-unity kayiqalisanga kathesi njengoba nje i-unity yake yabakhona ngezapho zanu-GNC ngo-72 yabakhona emabuthweni ngo-74 75 izipa eMozambique yabakhona i-patriotic front siya-negotiate eLancaster House. Kodwa sesizibusa sesithi hayi ibandla lizaba linye lizaba kodwa ibiza amabandla omabili. Wakwalani ukuthi kuthiwe i-patriotic front and then amabandla asale ekhona elema-structure awo a-50 ama-members ngoba lokho kwenzakalayo khathesi yikuthi sizadobha amajodona la ayekhona kungakabi ngo-1987 angedlula sizaze sidobhe lamakiliwane ngoba kakula ndlela yokungenisa abantu abatsha abezaphu babe ngama-members kuzanu ku-leadership. That is one of the things esayiphumelayo ukuthi nxa uphakathi esiswini somuntu angakuginya sokumele akudle umzimba wakho uye phambili esuka lapha sokumele aye ngaphandle ayakukaka bebe kuphela kwendaba. So thina azange sivume ukuthi siza kuyanyiwa ezambuzi kuphele izapho khonapho ngoba nxa usesiswini somuntu yikho lapho yakhona. And I think that the sooner people get this, the better. Ukuthi izapho ephakathi kwezanu laba abasalayo is a non-renewable agency, and that is the fact of the matter. And we are not going to wait for that. Ukuthi history yethu iginywe iyenyiwa ngomunye umuntu ngaphandle. Ngiyabonga.
Yes, sakuzwa kakhulu ke ungayikhatshana ubambe khonapho sizokuthiwa umnumzana uMatonga sebuyile. But he says, those that remained in ZANU-PF are still finding it difficult to exist in that party. They are not renewable in any way. Like you cannot have many members of ZAPU, within that kind of party arrangement, which is there right now.
Dr. Matonga, munoti kudii nazvo kuti vari mubatanidzwa uyu zviri kunetsa kuti vange vachiramba vachirarama varimo?
Vanhu vane shungu dzavo asi zvinozoita vanhu vokuti vamwe vanhu havasi kugara muno muZimbabwe so out of touch nereality. Kuti elections anoitwa muZimbabwe every 5 years we have elections to choose the leadership. Dai majority unity vanofanira kuvhotera kare ZANU-PF yake zvekunzi haishandi yakabva. But it's a thing of the past. Ine ubatanidzwa weformer PF zako varipo izvi
Dr. Matonga, nhare inenge iri kutidetsera regai tiedze zvakare kuti tinge tichikufonirai zvakare. Asi matisi kunyatsokunzwai zvakanaka. Maybe mukafamba mbichana kubva pamuri. Okay.
Vamwe vanhu vari kutaura kuti havasiri muno muzimbabwe havakunya kuziva zvinhu zviri kuitika paground. Zvakawanda zvinhu zvakanaka zvaitwa muzimbabwe, asi kana usiri muzimbabwe vanovhota vanovhota ende vanenge vahwina ivavo vopotiza kuti zvekuti wangombo vakafara zvikazoti tinowesta time chikodzokorora guku rahundi chikodzokorora guku rahundi pagoshaya kana one kana solution inobuda. Toda vanhu vari constructive vane constructive criticism sekuti kumatebhendi maclinic hakuna, mahospitals hakuna, mvura hakuna. Ndo zvinhu zvekuti nokuti pane maleaders ariko, mamps ariko, maministers ariko, ndo vanhu vanofanira kunge vachipa pressure kuhurumende. Kana uina mp wako ndokwaunenge ikoko hakuna mvura, hakuna magetsi, sewer system is down. Those things have to be delivered to the people because it is your constitutional right. Haisi favor. Sekuti zvinhu zvobva kuharare nyika yese ine capital city. But it's up to the people who are represented vakavhoterwa nevanhu to represent the constituents avo. Nekuti gotuka vamubhadeti goti dhani goti mashona. And it's a thing of the past. Let's be productive. Let's be arguments and then solutions. Nekuti hakuna kana uri kuSouth Africa usiri kuno kuBulawayo kana usiri kuno kuGwanda. Hakuna chinoitika. Who is going to do the work for you? Saka dzokai mupushe zvinhu zvenyu muno muZimbabwe. You don't vote kana uri South Africa. Saka zviripo ndo zviripo zvacho unfortunately. Ende mugonanidzwa nekungotukirira azvibatire. Kune marepresentatives ariko vari kuita basa ravo.
Thank you, Dr. Matonga. Dr. Mkanja, I wanted to say something.
Yeah, well, he's going on and on, but I think he said a few points which I wanted to respond to. One of them, he said that people who are out of Zimbabwe are out of touch with Zimbabwe. Now, first of all, I am actually from Zimbabwe and I live here. I'm in Bulawayo, so I'm not one of those who are out of the country. Secondly, the people out of the country know a lot while they're out of the country. They are the ones keeping their relatives and families going inside Zimbabwe. They know it extremely well. They feel it every day because they've sustained their relatives inside the country. But he also said something about voting and winning and so on. That is another area which I think you need a special day for that, to talk about the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, ZEC, and the transition that is supposed to happen from ZEC, rather from the Registrar General's office to ZEC, so that ZEC is in charge of the voters' roll. Because right now it is in limbo, because it is still in the office of the Registrar General, and it is subject to a lot of manipulation as has happened in the past. So I think that those things are still outstanding. And then he blamed the ministers and the MPs from the South for the lack of development. That really is disingenuous, because all the government departments have their counterparts everywhere in the country. You don't have to wait for MPs in order to go and do your job as a government functionary. You need resources for that, and of course you need to be from the areas if as far as possible. And in most cases it is not happening that way. The locals are not getting the jobs who can understand the issues in their areas. He mentioned clinics, for example. Clinics, schools, I mentioned before. There are places which have not seen a new classroom block in 50 years. So to talk about development and how exciting it has been since Zimbabwe happened, even development of water resources, Bulawayo, for example, no new dam for such a long time. And the resources are not there to get the water from Bulawayo before we talk about the Zambezi project and so on. So there are things on the ground which are not imaginary, but which people are talking about because they're experiencing them every day. I'm amakhiwa abantu amakhiwa lawo ayebhikisana kuqalisanga namuhla sokulamashona lamandebele embusweni amakhiwa aweharare lawo ayehlale ebhikisana abakulawa besisafetwa eharare bobamba zonke aqalisanga namuhla. In English, center-periphery relations are not necessarily the same as tribe. This is to do with accountability of the center to the outlying areas. That is why many countries are talking of devolution. Others have adopted federal systems. Big countries, the US and so on, UK, some of them are federal, Germany are federal, or they've devolved governments to some degree. This is not a local problem where people say it's because they are Shonas, that's why people in Matabele want autonomy from us. No, it is to do with a center which monopolizes all the resources and decides what you get and when you get it and who delivers it. We need devolution of power. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Gibbs, of course, is talking about the Harare being Bamba Zonke.
Oh, yes.
You know where it comes from. Back in the Federation of Rhodesia and Nyasaland.
Yes.
Where this federation was created between Zambia, Malawi, and Zimbabwe, and everything was going to to Harare. All the resources
So it became
from the other
Bambazonke,
countries, were being channeled to Harare. So it became Bambazonke because all the other countries in the federation were complaining. Mr. Matonga, is Harare still Bambazonke?
There is always a capital city, and that's the headquarters of most of the organizations. So really, to say that Harare is Bambazonke, if it is, that's why we need representatives. That's why you've got MPs. The issue of devolution was discussed because I was part of that constitutional making process. So anyone who says we want to go back to devolution, when that issue was addressed in the constitution, I think it's just really naive to say the list. We need to appreciate what is being done. There's a body of what is done. Sometimes Victoria Falls is not in Harare. Wange mine is not in Harare. Generation of power is not in Harare. So really, for saying everything is Bambazonke in Harare, I don't blame them actually in a way, because things are very tight. It appears as if everything is happening in the capital city. But go back to your MP, that's a starting point, that's a basic. What is it that they're doing to represent their constituencies? But I would like to see a Bulawayo with water. I would like to see the Zambezi water project taking off. It was led by Jadengo. What did he do? He did nothing. You see? So everything you're blaming Harare, yet you've got representatives. You voted for your MPs. You said you didn't want Zanu-PF. You voted for MDC. What is it that Trangradi to Matabele? Nothing. Even when it came to
But is that not the work of the government, Dr. Matonga? Dr. Matonga, can you blame the opposition for lack of development?
I'm just giving you an example. That's when there was a state government. Sangirai, the people of Matabele voted for Sangirai, but when it came to appointing ministers,
thank you, Dr. Matonga. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you, Dr. Matonga and Dr. Mkandla and all those who wrote to us Facebook and on WhatsApp. We also want to thank our callers and our team behind the scenes, our engineers and producers. Signing off, this is Blessing Zulu.
And I'm Gibbs Dube. Good night.